Dr. CB.
Yo, Dunny.
We back.
In the nice house.
Nice house.
Favorite time of the year.
Favorite time of year. I'm glad that you could make it this morning. I thought maybe you were up a little too late last night and wouldn't be able to make it in today.
Yeah, I'm surprised I'm here as well.
Yeah.
But, just riding the enthusiasm from our very first softball game.
Your first softball game. Funky Monkeys are back.
We are back, man. We have already tied our win total from our, entire history as a team. So,
has it been 3 seasons?
This is season 3. We are 1-0. It's a big thing, man.
Yeah, that is a big thing. Actually, Funky Monkeys not having a losing record.
Yeah.
It's kind of a mind-bending phenomenon.
For sure. I remember texting you about the game last night, and you were like trying to understand what had actually happened.
I was trying to understand the world. My whole conception of reality just evaporated.
Yeah. I would say the same for the team as well. It was kind of fun. The first time we ever won a game was last year, and it was like we had just won the Olympics or something. Mm-hmm. And the last night, it was like we had been there before, Very cool, very calm.
Packed up the bats.
Confirmed our next game. See you next week. We'll do this again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's your, just to get an early prediction, what's your prediction for next Wednesday?
I'm going to ride this wave of enthusiasm. Go with the Dunning-Kruger effect here, huh?
Yeah, into delusion.
I'm calling a win.
Okay.
Big time win.
A big time win.
Yeah, big time win in the F League, Co-Ed Softball League, City of Flagstaff.
So F.
Yeah.
F meaning that's the highest tier or lowest tier?
Absolutely the lowest, yeah. Yeah, but it was a good game, man. Lots of excitement, back and forth, lead changes,
How many unforced errors per inning?
Per inning? Dang, I don't know. I would say double digits for sure as a total, but I don't know. Divide by 5. So maybe
2 to 3,
6 to 7.
No, 6 to 7. I thought when you were saying double digits, 10. No, we're talking about.
We're talking 30s here, man. Yeah. We're a pretty good team. But yeah, man, we got new jerseys this year. Shout out to Bryce at Avail Tattoo with the new jersey sponsorship by Nike. We got increased salary cap, new players coming on the roster.
Yeah.
It's a whole thing.
That's the rumor around Flag is, did you guys bring in a ringer?
Yeah, we got some ringers, plural.
Yeah.
Maybe singular.
What's his name? That new guy that's really good.
Oh, he's the big hitter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The big hitter.
Yeah.
So that's his
Mr. Leather.
Mr.
He
Leather.
flashes that glove.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are his 2 code names. What's his name?
That's what we call him.
What's his name?
Big hitter and Mr. Leather.
Big hitter and Mr. Leather. Yeah. If he were to show up for a day of work, how would people at work refer to this man?
Hey, good morning, big hitter, Mr. Leather. Yeah. Glad to see you.
You don't know his name.
I definitely do, man. He's good. Good as a mug, though.
Good as a mug.
I'm going all in. It's Zach.
Yeah, Funky Monkeys. Started the season off right.
Starting the season off right, man. 1-0.
Well, good luck to the Funky Monkeys out there.
Yeah, thank you, man. We'll pass it along. We'll ride that wave.
Yeah. What do we got on the docket today?
Man, a little Run DMC Beastie Boys style intro for a good friend.
Oh, should we chop it up? Should we finish each other's sentences?
Each other's sandwiches? I think so for sure. What do you think?
Yeah.
Give it a try.
I'm all in on a sandwich.
People will love that. Us finishing each other's sandwiches. So
yeah.
We're out here today. We're going beyond flag with our good friend, the illustrious, eclectic, and most excellent Andrea Meronuck.
Oh, yeah.
Andrea, like many fine folks working and walking among this planet, earned her undergraduate and graduate degrees from the Northern Arizona University.
Go Lumber Nerds. Her graduate degree was in community counseling and was awarded alongside her efforts to earn certificates in ethnic studies and women and gender studies.
Currently, Andrea has lots of free time, which lies between her full-time job as a clinical director for Northland Family Help Center,
which is a nonprofit that offers free trauma therapy to folks who are a victim of a crime. Great resource.
Great resource. And running 2 small businesses.
Moon Facilitation, where she does clinical supervision, psychotherapy, and training or consultation.
And Beloved of the Earth, which produces yoga, meditation retreats, and most recently took a group of people down the San Juan River.
And as if that's not enough, lastly, she also serves on the boards of 2 nonprofits, Southside Community Association and Coconino Coalition for Children and Youth.
Yeah, and fake out, because lastly, she does more. Not to mention her participation in the Justice, Equity, Diversity, Inclusivity Council for a place dear to our hearts. Beyond the Pines.
Yeah. Go lumber nerds.
Nerds. Pine nerds.
Pine nerds. This was a fun episode with Andrea where she shares about growing up in North Dakota, which is, I think that's just north of South Dakota?
North of North Dakota or south of South Dakota. It's one of those. I can't remember. Yeah.
And then she also addresses how she got into her work and the influences from her community that have had a profound impact on how she views and approaches the world. Thanks so much for tuning in as we go beyond flag with
Andrea Meronuck. Welcome to Beyond Flag, a Beyond the Pines production, created by, with, and for the people of Flagstaff, building connection in the town we love. We are your hosts,
Dr. Daniel J. Phillips
and Cody Bayless, also known as Dr. Chinchilla Nice Nice. Thanks for tuning in as we go beyond flag, straight from the dunny of our observatory. Well, we are in the nice house with Andrea, and thanks so much for joining us today. First question we usually typically like to ask people is what day-to-day life looks like for you, or what you've been up to recently.
Every morning I wake up and spend about an hour walking around the garden in my pajamas, watering and checking things and seeing what's bloomed, and feeling quite self-satisfied. Spending a lot of time in the garden. I feel like my whole life I wanted to have a cutting garden. My neighbor growing up was like an older lady who had traveled the world, and she never got married and had a beautiful garden. And I realized this year, I have achieved a childhood dream. So yeah, that's been good. And then after that, usually go to work. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, we understand you to be a woman with many irons in the fire.
Yes.
And so what are, I guess, from a job standpoint and some of the things that you've been doing?
All the things. Yeah. So I'm the clinical director at Northland Family Help Center, which is a local victim service agency. I supervise the counselors there, and we have free trauma therapy for victims of crime. And then in addition to that, I'm on a couple of local boards. So the board of the Southside Community Association, as well as the Coconino Coalition for Children and Youth. And then I have two businesses. I have a small therapy private practice. I supervise counselors can hire me to also supervise them in their private practice as they're getting their independent license. And then I do some clinical trainings over there. And then I have another business that is focused more on retreats and group experiences and more of the coaching versus the therapy side of things, really focused on just bringing myself forward and my interests forward a lot in that project too. So, yeah.
Yeah, very cool. And most recently you were on the San Juan?
Yes. Yeah. So we did an incredible San Juan River trip collaboration between me and my friend Melissa Keller at Awaken Heart Somatics and Sekou Outfitters. And please forgive my Dene pronunciation there. And we took 10 folks on a yoga and meditation river retreat, and it was incredible. So that was about 6 weeks ago. And we're going to have our check-in call tonight. So I'm looking forward to seeing everybody again.
Very cool. Yeah, can you take us through what maybe one of those trips looks like?
Well, we had an orientation and packing call, which I'm very excited about because I have a special interest in packing gear.
Genuine? A deep interest in packing gear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like to make lists and then look back at the list and keep, like dialing in your kit.
Yep.
You have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm getting some nods.
Yeah, we're with it.
There's some nods in the room. Do you do this?
Oh yeah, the old shakedown.
The old shakedown.
Shakedown.
Yeah. So I have like notebooks full of like this backpacking trip, this.
Right.
I never used this. I shouldn't have brought this. Like I really wanted this. And also a lot of the folks who about half the folks who came on our retreat hadn't been on a river trip. And so we just wanted people to feel really comfortable. So I had all my gear packed, my personal gear, and unpacked it for everybody. And then we went up to Bluff. We all like met there either the morning or the night before and got on the river, floating down, floating down. I don't know why I'm laughing so hard.
It is. Yeah, I love it. I love sitting with you every time. It's great to hear you laugh about getting on the river, hearing you laugh about saying that you have 2 businesses. Feels not matchy. These are great businesses. This is such a cool thing. So you jumped on the river, and it was a pretty extreme, like a kind of an epic trip in that there were some unique circumstances with the flow.
Yeah, it was a flow that I had never heard. I definitely heard of before, but never heard of in any recent memory for me going on trips. So I think it was about 3,000 CFS, and then overnight went up to about 20,000.
Wow.
And we were very safe at like a very large, wonderful camp. And so there was waterfalls coming off of the side canyons and rock falls and high water. But also we just had a lot of space. And so we were okay. Not everybody, I think maybe no one was hurt, but I think some other folks had like a rougher time losing gear and stuff like that. But we were able to kind of receive the extreme scouring out energy of that, but without having really any safety impacts at all. And so it was just like really, really incredible to witness. And the group, I mean, I had like 2 worries before we went on the trip. Like, I'm going to humiliate myself in some way. Worry number 1. And then worry number 2. There's going to be bad weather. And both those things did happen. It turns out it was still wonderful.
Yeah. Oh, so bad weather and embarrassment? What happened there?
I just like flipped over in my little ducky.
That's embarrassing?
I mean, not right now, but like beforehand when you're like doing something brand new you haven't done before, you're like, I have to nail it. Yeah.
Meaning this was like the first time you led the yoga and meditation retreat. And so leading the group, because you've been on the river many times.
Yeah.
And so that part was embarrassing. But in hindsight, you're okay.
Yeah, it was actually wonderful to have an experience of having something like imperfect happen and just be with it. Yeah, and the weather, like we definitely had lots of sun too, but we had lots of wind and rain, and the whole group was just like, yeah, we're with it.
Yeah. That's cool. I mean, those were extreme conditions, like epic.
Very epic.
Despite a moment of embarrassment and bad weather, turned out to be a phenomenal trip.
It was a phenomenal trip. Melissa and I were reflecting that like, wow, we had like some changes of plans, but we were able to do all the practices that we had planned. We even added one. So it was just really, really wonderful to like be in the beautiful canyon, be with the cliffs and the water and the cottonwood trees, and just like spend time together, connecting to ourselves and each other. And, you know, folks had a lot of time to like play and do their own thing and hike and stuff like that, too. And just like hike up from camp, float down in their life jacket, recirculate and cover themselves in mud and stuff too. Yeah, it was like really, really wonderful.
Cool. Is this the first time that you had taken this specific trip?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
You know, I mean, certainly have gone with friends and we've like done a meditation together or like practice yoga together. And it was, you know, Melissa grew up going on the San Juan and knows Cody Little from Teku, from guiding together when they were younger. And, you know, I got into going on rivers a lot later than that, but we're really good friends. And she came back from a trip with Cody last summer and was like talking about how she had been practicing and was like, wow, I just really want to have this be the next thing. And then, immediately invited me to co-facilitate her with her, which was really incredible. So
we, on one of our other shows, just covered the neurobiological effects of meditation. It's really interesting to learn about some of the benefits. We only covered a few of many. And so I was wondering, what are some of the things that maybe you introduce to the people that go on your trip, or what are some of the things that you cover related to yoga or meditation?
Yeah, so the trip is called Beloved of the Earth. And so the theme of the practices is really organized around experiencing ourselves, as individuals and also as members of a collective, as beloved of the earth. So to feel that embodied sense of belonging and being held and cared for. And so we really wanted the practices to be oriented around that experience. So a lot of the meditations that I was doing were body-based practices to help people, soften in their body and kind of come out of the monkey mind chatter and just like into the experience of goodness. And, we had some journal prompts on a layover day and just talked about like softening into this idea of like, we're doing this personal growth thing together. But what if like nothing needs to be fixed? What if there's not a problem? What if we can meet this moment from that place? So a lot of the practices were kind of paired with the yoga that, so I'm not a yoga teacher, Melissa is, with the yoga that she was bringing.
Very cool. Beloved of the Earth was the name of it?
Yeah.
It's a really neat name in the way that you're describing it all. I guess for you personally, what came out of that experience when you reflect on it?
I think I feel more connected in that way in community, experiencing like that sense of belonging. And, I think that there's so much to be grieving. There's so much to be terrified of in the world. And this wasn't an escape from that, but it was like this solidification for me of how much beauty and how much capacity we have and how much support we have. And it can be really easy to just like be in the regular society world of like having to do all the things that we have to do in our daily lives. And, those are important and sacred things too, picking up groceries and all those kinds of things. I just think that there was more of a foundation for me to really connect to how much I have to like root into when I'm, facing some of the things that are hard and difficult in the world. I can still have fun and be facing, catastrophe and calamity in life. And just the sense that the river has been there for such a long time and people have lived with the river for such a long time. And I think a sense of like, we were talking about like when Cody did a land acknowledgement and just like talked about what we were doing on the river. Like he talked about how we were like quote unquote recreating, but that's really not what he's doing or what we're doing on this trip. And I just really resonated with that so much. And for me, I was taking like a remake of the word into like recreate, just like a really, really beautiful experience.
Yeah, that's a great way of looking at it.
It's really cool to hear. It makes me wonder, what is the vision for this part of it?
We're going to do Beloved of the Earth, hopefully as an annual trip. So there's some other retreats that I also lead, but this is the river trip retreat that we're hoping to do. So we already have a couple of people signed up on the like info list for when permits are open next year. So
Very cool.
Yeah, it was great. We were there on summer solstice, so we were really like experiencing sort of the apex of the year, that longest day. On the exact other side from the shortest day, too. We turned that corner on that trip, too.
And so that was just one of the many things that you did. Kind of undersell how many things you do here.
People are like, you're kind of extra. Doing all the things.
You're doing too much, bro.
You're doing too much. Yeah. It really is impressive. I guess I'd be curious to hear a little bit about your work as a board member for, you mentioned 2 different boards. It was the Southside Community Association.
Yeah.
And then Coconino, what was that?
Coalition for Children and Youth.
Coalition for Youth and Children. I'd be curious to hear about your work with those.
For me, it was like really important to be like, what we do have is each other right here. And I want to, contribute to that so much. And so the Southside is based out of the Meronuck Center, which is the site of the historic Dunbar School, which was a segregated school for Black students in Flagstaff. And the Meronuck Center isn't the site, the Meronuck Center isn't the actual Dunbar School, but the building is built on the site. And so, for me, being involved in the neighborhood in that way also is a way for me to connect to preserving that history and that story of so much diversity in Flagstaff's history, and also like be involved with, real kind of ground level relationships that are organized around social justice. And so that is exciting for me to serve in that way. So, yeah, I'm the president of the board of the Coconino Coalition for Children and Youth. And, there is a link between the work that we're doing over there, because CCCNY is really, really interested in this idea of trauma-informed care and elevating that to a level of how we're operating as in those organizing things that we have that run society. So there's never going to be, I think this may be something that Bruce Perry said, a psychologist, if you're familiar with him. Mm-hmm. There's never going to be enough clinicians to meet the need of all the trauma that folks in our communities face. And so how can we bring some of these principles that we really understand to care for whole people and their whole lives into some of these non-healthcare types of organizations. So we have a project where we're working with the county and the city to, it's called Reimagine Community. We're doing trauma-informed care-based education for people outside of mental health. And so, that's that whole person understanding as an employee of an organization that is trauma-facing, like understanding and having support in your organization for the stress that is. Also having some of those like grounding skills to be able to make a real difference in that interaction with a resident of our community and be able to get the support for how so much work that is outside of mental health is still really trauma facing. And so that's a really, really exciting thing that we get to do.
Yeah. Where would that education be disseminated, or where would that happen? Who are you working with on that?
So we have a symposium coming up in October, and I can get you the details for that. Mm-hmm. And then we had a little bit of a hiatus in the height of the pandemic, but every year we do a conference. And in 2025, we're actually rethinking how we're doing a conference for families and mental health providers and other people who work in social services for families. We're hoping to have like a learning atmosphere that does center our whole lives, that has like more of a fun festival sort of element, and where we're moving and connecting, and also like learning together. So that's going to be in May of 2025, and hopefully we'll have an outdoor location, and I can get you all the details of that too. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I was sort of raised in a community that was really focused around art-based activism. I think that these boards have really allowed me to, bring my unique strengths and like shape some part of what we're doing in our community. So with the Southside, we recently received funding to hire a paid executive director, and we have a project in partnership with the city of Flagstaff and a grant from the EPA to be one of 3 climate change resilience hubs in the community. And so that is a very, very exciting project, which maybe the resilience hub specialist will be someone I can introduce you all to. Bringing this idea of like, how do we meet climate change challenges, and building community connection and trust is like step 1 to do any of that support and dissemination. So super, super excited about that part too.
And this is all just on top of your day job. Like everything we've talked about so far is actually not your day job. This is incredible.
Yeah.
Which is a low stress kind of job, right? Clinical director of
just the clinical director
Northland Family
of an
Help.
agency that focuses on treatment for trauma.
Yeah.
Easy peasy.
Well, I think that we all come out. I mean, you all are both parents. I'm not, but we kind of come out like with a particular orientation. And I think for me, I've always had like so many ideas and so many things I wanted to do. And getting to this like phase of my life where I'm just like, I'm actually gonna be myself and do all the things that I'm interested in, for as long as it fits for me. And, we are partners, CCCNY and Northland, because Northland as an advocacy organization is really interested in impacting the community at large, right? A lot of survivors don't seek services. A lot of people who have mental health challenges don't seek services. And so how can we make the community as a whole a place that can hold us all better? Mm-hmm. There's only so much you can do at a small agency, and we do so much. But yeah, I'm really, really proud that connection is made, because I think it's a way that as, mental health practitioners, I think you all are doing this too, right? That we can care for ourselves and our hearts and the hearts of those people that we get to know so intimately, our clients, to make the conditions in the community a little bit better.
You mentioned growing up was it a place or in a space where like art-based activism was a component of that?
Yeah, that place is called North Dakota.
Yeah, let's hear about North Dakota.
It's like the hub.
Yeah.
It's the hub.
Art-based
Yeah,
activism.
Classically known as the hub of art-based activism.
It's not actually the Bay Area or...
None
Bay
of those.
Area got nothing.
You ever been to Dakota? Yeah, is that where you grew up?
I did, yeah.
Oh, no
I was
way.
born in Bismarck, North Dakota, yeah.
Oh, okay.
What's your take on South Dakotans?
I like South Dakotans.
That was a long pause, though. When you take that long pause and then you declaratively say, I like South Dakotans, the message is actually opposite.
I know. There's a way that like, that therapy can be a little bit like improv. And so like I have like an inner comedian. But yeah, no, I like South Dakota.
I could see you analyze every direction of the answer and how it would. Yeah, exactly. And then stay. I like South Dakota.
So is the inner comedian like laughing at all those and then choosing which route to go? Yeah, that's good stuff. So North Dakota.
Yeah.
You mentioned early on, to kind of tag on to what Cody's saying here, that you looked around at your garden recently and you realized you're manifesting the thing that as a child you had envisioned. You had dreamt up. So, what in South Dakota inspired you to want that garden, but also to pursue all these other things that you're cultivating?
So you just did this thing that everybody does if you're from North Dakota.
Oh, no.
Which is... people think it's South Dakota, and they say, right, you're from South Dakota because you switched it when you just...
Oh, did I just switch it? Oh, no. And we had established that South Dakota's not super cool.
No, it is cool.
Oh, no. I insulted you.
No. You have to try harder than that. Something that's actually really interesting, for a while, I was a forestry major at NAU. And there is like a ponderosa pine forest in South Dakota. That's not too unlike our ponderosa. The real forestry people out there are going to have some details that I don't know, but I was more of the humanities type forestry major.
They have the science track and the humanities track for forestry.
I think I was the only. No, that's not true.
They made a special track, a humanities forestry track. So there is a forest in South Dakota.
Yeah.
But that forest has nothing on the holistic experience of North Dakota. I'm so sorry. Genuinely, deeply.
Yeah.
And so what experiences in North Dakota, led you to being invested in so much in the community, to having that garden that you look at and you say, I've crossed off this thing?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I grew up in a kind of a connected neighborhood. And, I think that relates to the neighborhood association or the community association here. A lot of the folks in my neighborhood, became my friends and mentors, right? I'd say like a first mentor that I had was this woman, Ruth Staley, who lived next door, who had a really unconventional life and seemed to love it. And was able to like cherish me. And I had like special time with like a grandmother type elder who really just wanted to connect with me. She would travel places and then bring me back special toys from Japan. And it was just like really, really, I think I felt really cherished by her. And I think that's something that we all need.
And she was kind of like outside the box a little bit. There's something in the way you're saying.
Yeah. I knew her only as a small child to a teenager. Mm-hmm. So I would love to know more about, to find out, connect with some of her relatives. But, she had never been married. And I just feel like there's something about like a woman from that generation, just like doing her own thing. Mm-hmm. Just like really, really powerful, like pursuing her own interests. I don't know what kind of work she ever did or anything, because I only knew her when she was in her golden years, like wearing like wonderful clothes. And like we spent a lot of time in her garden in our pajamas, and she had fabulous pajamas. So, yeah. And then a good friend of mine, Jeremiah Polachek, who's an artist who lives in Prague. We were good friends in high school, and his parents were really influential to me. So his dad was a humanities instructor at a tribal college there, and his mom was the head of the North Dakota Domestic Violence Coalition. His dad, Brian, was going to, actually in the Bay Area, Matthew Fox started something called the University of Creation Spirituality. So he was going to get his Doctor of Divinity there while I was in high school. And like that was my place where I was. And so there was just this interest in, Brian was doing his dissertation project, I believe, was interviewing many different spiritual communities and how they would care for nuclear waste. So he had been an anti-nuclear weapons activist, and imagine still is. Haven't talked in a while. Was really interested in like how do we care for things across generations, and one of the spiritual communities that he interviewed to design a nuclear containment site was like his son and a group of friends. And so there was this way that we were just like engaged in this spiritual and intellectual process around those things that are really incredibly painful and destructive in our world. And so Brian and Bonnie were just like doing a lot of activism around various solidarity communities. And a lot of that was, I think it's how I learned to care for those difficulties through art and ritual. So we did a really, really beautiful ritual, Jeremiah and Brian and I. So I don't know if you've been in the center of the country. There's many, many nuclear weapons sites. There's a book, I don't think it's in print anymore, but you probably can buy it for a lot of money, called Nuclear Heartland. And Brian had participated in that book, naming each of the nuclear weapon sites where there's missiles in the ground. And he had named one Blood Filth, which is a name from a James Joyce novel, I believe. And as a part of his divinity school process, we went up there to D3, Blood Filth, that site that he had adopted. And we brought paintings that his mother had done. She was very, very interested in equity and very, very interested in intervening in environmental destruction, and had painted all of these like really, really incredible, beautiful but monstrous creatures kind of connecting to nuclear waste and nuclear weapons. And we brought all of these paintings all around and put them around the fence and put like little pieces of poems in the fence. And that nuclear weapon site was very near the farm where my dad grew up. So it was just like, there were things like that taught me like there's a way to care for ourselves. And I think that my garden is sort of still that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an incredible story. How old were you in that story there?
I think I was probably 15 or 16. Yeah.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
And was there any like musical component to this? Is there like a music backdrop to what you're doing?
Yeah. Yeah, I was big choir nerd growing up.
Okay. So choir and art activism.
Yeah.
Blammo. Yeah. Nuclear weapons.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think when I was younger, I like held myself back a little bit from like bringing my own creative voice forward. Like I didn't have a band of my own or anything like that, but I was involved as a collaborator on a lot of different artistic projects.
And from Bismarck, where did you go?
Here.
Really?
Yeah. So I moved here in 1998 to go to NAU. My dad had moved to Phoenix when I was about 8. And so I had been visiting, I'd come to Phoenix and visit Sedona and visit Flagstaff and stuff like that. So I knew I didn't want to be in North Dakota anymore, even though there's like things that I miss about the place. And every other college in Arizona was like so big, so big. Other people, if you grow up here, you'd go to like Phoenix to go to a concert, but I drove like 8 hours to Minneapolis to see any concerts. Yeah. You could see like Pantera would come, or like metal bands would come through Bismarck. But other than that, like it'd be rare that you could get like New Kids on the Block to stop or
metal bands. They're all in for Bismarck. Bismarck has a following. New Kids on the Block, not so much. And you jumped right over South Dakota. So you went. you enjoyed your upbringing in North Dakota, and rather than consider moving down to hone that humanities forestry degree in South Dakota, in the Ponderosas in South Dakota, you jumped to Flagstaff.
Yeah.
You mentioned some things that drew you to Flagstaff too. With the university, it's so much smaller back then. But what was the program that brought you to Harvard of the West?
Is that a real thing?
That's a real thing. It's something we've been trying to campaign.
Mostly Cody. I love supporting Cody in this, but yeah, I don't want to be lumped in with creating it or that I'm trying to perpetuate it. But it is a thing for Cody, Harvard of the West.
I love
it.
Of the West. I love it.
Look at all that's fantastic alumni, huh?
Yeah. So I was an oboe major when I went to NAU. And I'm not that good at oboe, but there's not a lot of oboe players. So it's like relatively easy to get a scholarship.
That is impressive. Those music programs are difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. It was very rigorous, and a double reed instrument is incredible because there's such a craft element to it. So we had a master class where we made our own reeds, so that, like tie a piece of twine to the bottom of that couch right there, and then like cover it with wax, and then take this cork and metal thing and take a soaked actual natural reed and like cut it and eventually like make this thing. And I did like that part about it, but ultimately I started working for the student feminist organization and like got essentially like women and gender studies degree.
So did you leave the music program altogether eventually?
Yeah, I did.
Wow.
I did. Yeah.
But was it a slow, natural process, or was there just a definitive moment where you're like, I'm done with the oboe for now?
Yeah, I mean, I was more into singing, but you know, how many mezzo-sopranos are there?
I don't. I actually don't know.
Yeah, weren't you just looking that up the other day?
How many mezzo-sopranos
Apply for the program at NAU annually?
Yeah, but I couldn't even spell it, so I didn't even know what I was trying to ask it.
Two Z's in that word.
Two Z's.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that there was, I was just like, oh yeah, this is my home. These are my people like wanting to do arts and student organizing and stuff like that. So
something connected, like it intuitively felt like it fit. Like you bumped into a path that resonated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that like, I was like in and out of college because I did have my own like mental health sort of journey along the way. And I think I've always been someone who is like deeply, deeply impacted by some of the like the horrors of the world. And there's a way that can like really sort of mix with my inner life. And so I had to develop a way to sort of deal with that sensitivity. So it wasn't like a straight, I think was my joke. I squeezed a 4-year degree into about 7 or 8 years. And then worked in disability services for a while, and then went back to school to become a counselor.
Yeah, at NAU?
At NAU.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I've just lived here the whole time.
So Bismarck and Flagpole.
Yep, that's it.
Yeah. Wow.
Bizbang.
Bisbang. Bisbang and Flagpole. Very cool.
Yeah.
And you've been able to do so many things here. You know, one thing that I don't know if you've mentioned this, but you've done a lot of like seminars. I don't know if that's the right word for it, but seminars or classes on self-compassion.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about your work in the field of self-compassion.
Yeah, absolutely. When I was in grad school, which me and you were in grad school at the same time, Cody.
Yeah. Samesies. I think we had a class or two together.
Yeah. When I was in grad school, there was a PhD student who was studying self-compassion, and she was talking to me about her research design and Kristen Neff's work on self-compassion and how it's just how self-esteem is really a fair weather friend, but self-compassion is always with you. And I had a meditation practice. I had a friend since junior high who had a lot of autoimmune health issues and things like that. And mindfulness practice was something that she really used. So that I was introduced to mindfulness practice when I was pretty young. And this self-compassion component that my colleague in school was talking about really resonated with me. So reading Kristen Neff's work, when I worked at a community health center after grad school, created a group for young women to learn some self-compassion skills, mindfulness and self-compassion skills. And then subsequent to that, Kristen Neff and Chris Germer got together and created a curriculum. So I did that training and then have taught that 8-week class for, I guess, since 2016, and went through a certification process with a mentor, supporting my teaching. So I've taught it probably about 12 times in town, to NAU counseling students, to the larger community, as well as often offering classes to my colleagues at Northland.
Yeah. What have you seen over time after teaching that class 12 times, different groups? I guess I wonder what you've even seen within yourself or some of the things that have stuck with you from that experience.
I'm really moved by how many people have really been able to relate to their life in a different way because of that. I think that it's actually clear, or there's evidence that we have in our society this orientation toward criticism of ourselves that's very intense and almost it can be so built in that it can be really invisible or invisibilized in our lives. And there's all these like mythological benefits of being like really mean to ourselves. Discovering that and having a way to show up for myself and support others to show up for themselves when they need themselves most, instead of throw themselves in the garbage when they need themselves most, I think is really revolutionary. I think there's so many ways that we can practice self-compassion, and it can be through our body and through also our mind, power orienting, to softening. And I think that like one of the myths is that we'll never meet our accomplishments or our goals if we're compassionate with ourselves. And, we can be compassionate and have standards for our lives. Turns out we might just have more emotional safety and pick ourselves up a little bit more graciously and lovingly when we fall and try again. So, I think my self-compassion practice has actually been the pathway for me to be coming forward with more of my voice as I reach this very exciting middle-aged time of life. Because I think that there's a lot of perfectionism that I would use to sort of like shut myself down from saying anything or bringing my ideas forward or my unique spark forward. And I think self-compassion allows for that.
Yeah, I'm always struck practicing therapy, the degree to which people are so unkind and critical of themselves. Yeah, it's striking to watch and hear sometimes.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite self-compassion exercise, or is there one thing that you often find yourself going to? Or if you were to share something with our listeners, what would be like a piece of advice in that realm?
I think there's so many, there's layers and layers of elements, but I think that a self-compassion practice that is pretty easy, it's called the self-compassion break, and it's part of this curriculum that I teach, is really just a 3-step process. And it's like a super easy back pocket practice, which is noticing that you don't feel good and then just naming it. This is a moment of suffering, or this is a moment of anger or boredom or a moment of confusion, despair. And then another aspect of self-compassion is this idea of common humanity, which is that when we are having difficulty, we are still in the stream of life. And we're not outside the stream of life. And so the next phase of this practice is suffering is a part of life. We all suffer, or we all get angry sometimes. And then the practice invites self-touch. So often just a hand on the heart, or it could be any self-touch, like right now my legs are crossed, my feet are touching each other. I could tune into that, just everyday thing, or my hands resting here, just noticing that. And then saying, may I be kind to myself? May I give myself what I need? And then like letting that little break kind of do what it's supposed to do, kind of break up the flow of that automatic inner criticism. And so that may I be kind to myself could just be, may I take a breath and let my mindset shift, or it could be like, I'm going to actually do something to tend to myself. And I think it's important to remember that, like, and as therapists, like sometimes people say like, well, I did that and it didn't work. I'm like, well, yeah, not all techniques like make us feel 1,000% better and whatever. When I'm having a hard time, I still deserve care. So just because like it didn't work, I was tender and caring to, quote unquote, to make me like flip the script. And I'm like, yeah, take on the world. I still felt difficulty, but I was there with myself. And I think that practice, it's a really sacred practice to just join ourselves. And I think it's how we show up for our inner child parts with our adult caregiver part of ourselves.
Right. Yeah, there's definitely a quality of like softness and nurturing.
Yeah.
To that. It's much different than that harsh critical voice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, you made this point that sticks out to me that sometimes I see work for clients is you emphasize that self-esteem can be like a fickle friend. Like, it can really be there in your successes and then becomes that self-critical voice if with any perceived flaw or failure. And yet you talked about the grace of picking yourself up or actually just showing up for yourself in the moment of difficulty with self-compassion, and that can be present all the time, and it doesn't remove difficulty, absolutely. But doesn't research and evidence also show that people that are highest achieving can tap into self-compassion versus self-esteem? Doesn't self-compassion actually show to elicit greater outcomes in perceived goals or successes?
Yeah. I mean, because I think what happened is that psychologists saw self-esteem as a trait. Mm-hmm. And so then there was this move towards self-esteem acquisition. And self-esteem acquisition on the one side of things can be kind of like narcissism perpetuating. And self-esteem, when it's, it's like this idea of like, you look in the mirror and you say like, I'm great, or like the Stuart Smalley kind of thing. But like that voice is really snarky when you feel bad. And so self-esteem is also like, I am exceptional, therefore I'm better. And so there's this kind of like inner competition that can, I think, perpetuate that criticism with self-esteem acquisition. And so, yeah, I think we really know that to move toward, what is our will in life, or what we're excited about, what we're bringing forth, there's going to be a lot of mistakes and mishaps and learnings along the way, and having the capacity to pick ourselves up, to be kind to ourselves, even when we're like have cringe feelings inside our body coming on the mic, for example.
Hear that?
And I think one of the great things that Kristen Neff talked about in the teacher training that I did was that so many people in psychology were anti self-compassion. They were like, self-compassion is weak. Self-compassion undermines motivation, on and on and on. And she was like, people came out of the woodwork saying all of these things, and then researchers just like took them down, right? So self-compassion does allow us to continue to pick ourselves up when we fall. And it's like an incredibly resilient trait. And absolutely associated with, achievement and high standards.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for sharing your expertise on that.
Yeah, so the idea that if I practice self-compassion, I will actually not feel motivated to achieve my goals is not true.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Like, because there's times when we all feel like we question, and to remind ourselves like, this is a moment of questioning. Yeah. Questioning is a part of life. May I show up for myself and just like keep taking steps. Yeah,
that's super interesting. I mean, it speaks to the function of the critical voice a little bit too, right? Like I have to almost criticize myself into success.
Yeah.
Otherwise I'll fail or fall short or something like that.
Yeah. And I think there's a way that like a capitalist orientation can build that into us, that only certain people have access to like bringing forward greatness, versus the idea that like we are here, emanating greatness just as we are. And if we can turn toward that, what else could we do? And I think there's a lot of like anxieties that get applied to us that make it so that we can't change the system. Like, for example, for me, how long I've spent in my life perseverating on like diet culture messages and like really what I could have, like what revolutions could be started if that energy had been oriented toward community collaboration instead of diet culture anxiety, So to me, there's a connection to individual self-compassion and what's possible as we move into different challenges in the world.
Yeah, and I feel really excited. Well, I mean, just to hear about the work that you've done is really encouraging. I feel really excited to introduce the Godzilla Plus One idea.
So what is Godzilla Plus One?
Right now, it's the name is being workshopped. Is that correct? But
yeah.
We saw that Andrea, in her desire to do more in the world, wanted to do a podcast with the Beyond the Pines channel and have an emphasis on self-compassion.
Yeah, absolutely.
So these nuggets, they're going to be pieces. These elements are going to exist within the show.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would really, I think with self-compassion as an organizing force and also bringing in many somatic practices and meditations as well, want to create a show where I have some conversations with people about elements of self-compassion, and bringing them forward in their lives around different topics, as well as offering audio practices that people can listen to and use to support their practice. And the Godzilla Plus One joke has been like, when you want to title something, and like podcasts have been around for a while, like all the names.
It's been done.
Your first idea for a name was Kristen Neff Explores Self-Compassion, but turns out that
also taken.
Already taken. So you went to Godzilla Plus One, and what's the deep meaning behind Godzilla Plus One?
Well, I could connect to a deep meaning. I mean, that probably won't be the name, but there is a show called, I haven't seen this Godzilla movie yet, but there is a Godzilla movie called Godzilla Minus One. Yeah. And I was like, it's a podcast where you have a conversation. Maybe plus one is part. And I also am a deep lover of the Godzilla tradition as someone who comes from like a lineage of anti-nuclear war activism, right? Because like, why is Godzilla important? It's a representation of this monster.
Growing beyond control.
Yeah, well, it's like the bomb drops, and then there's this monster, this destruction. And so, I think that science fiction and fantasy and those kinds of things are like very, very important for how we, storytelling, how we process. But there's not going to be, I don't think, a Godzilla element of this podcast. But now that we're really like juicing it up, this like visionary fiction kind of element. Dreaming the worlds we want into creation, but not where Godzilla is there. Yeah. Though.
So minus one makes more sense, but we're going to do plus one. But as a metaphor, that it did get profound there, right? Like as a metaphor for, we don't want this monster to show up or to have control larger than what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that is kind of my style, where I will bring something that's fun and like make it very profound and sacred and divine. I'm just going to make it real serious.
Yeah, you laugh when you say these things that are really cool about yourself. It's a great skill. It relates to one of the things you said about sharing about that San Juan trip early on, is that Cody asked you, what's one thing you take from this trip? And you said one of the things you labeled was that you can have fun despite calamity. With the way that the weather went and the fact that you had that embarrassing moment with your ducky flipping. Yeah. That it was all still fun, right?
Yeah.
And that's that side of you. You have that fun energy. Sometimes talking with you, it's like you have this perpetual joke you're stifling, and it makes the conversation so fun.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I think that like there's I think there is a perpetual joke. I mean,
Human existence.
yeah.
This whole thing, this absurd thing.
Yeah. I mean, I think that like we fight so much against the shadows of life. And I think that's something that I'm really oriented toward too. And I think it links to self-compassion is like the shadow integration. So like we have to, not as a spiritual bypass and not as an override, but we like have to be in play with these big other energies of creation and destruction in life. I'm forward with my laughter and I'm forward with those tears too. So, yeah.
I have some good news. Quick Google search does not turn up any podcast names with the name or the title Godzilla Plus One.
Okay.
So I think
we might move forward with this.
it's taken the next step.
At a minimum, it's going to be a phenomenal inside joke for the rest of life to live in perpetuity.
Yes.
This will be the thing.
Yeah. And we're making it outside since we're putting it on the airwaves.
It's going to be a large inside joke.
Yeah. Yeah.
For sure. I'm really looking forward to that. So, Andrea, it's been a lot of fun to sit with you today and learn a little bit about you. I did not know that you were from North Dakota. That's been fun to learn about.
Yeah.
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 And art-based activism and your experience there. Ruth Staley, was that her name?
Ruth Staley. Yeah. She was my next door neighbor.
Yeah.
You know, she was part of the village that raised me. And I think we were talking about this Instagram post that I made about being like a child-free perimenopausal woman who
is rocking compression socks.
Rocking compression socks and resting to bring my energy into the world to offer collective and community care. And Ruth Staley was one of those people for me.
Yeah.
Schlepping around the garden.
Every morning in your first hour of the day, you're Ruth Staley in the garden.
Yeah.
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 We usually conclude our show with a question of just regarding your connection to Flagstaff. And so it'd be, curious just to hear, how would you describe your own personal connection to this space?
Yeah. I mean, when I moved here, I was really getting connected to being in the outdoors and being connected to, backpacking and hiking and things like that. And so I hadn't had I had done a lot of camping and done some backpacking trips, but was really like connected here in community through, those immersive processes. And what a like cerebral way to talk about backpacking, an immersive process. So I am a home-oriented person, and I feel like my connection to Flagstaff is to create a home for all of us that are here. And I love to visit like some of the same places around here again and again, and really like try to honor them with my love. Those places that I take my little dog every day, those handful of places around town, the trails and things like that. My husband didn't grow up here his whole life, but grew up here when he was starting in elementary school. So I have, family in the region, just like feel really connected to the land here.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. It's been so much fun to sit with you today. And I'm really looking forward to Godzilla Plus One and see how things unfold. And we wish you all the best in everything that you do.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate the just the connection and the support and friendship of us hanging together and doing stuff. So I appreciate it so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, it always brightens my day to get to hang out. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah, seeing Andrea on the books, that's the best.
I'm very excited to have you both on Godzilla Plus One.
That sounds like a fun time.
Yeah.
All right. So Andrea's left the building.
She's gone, man. We're back in the nice house. Solo mio, solo tuyo.
Solo duo?
Solo duo.
Yeah.
There you go.
Man, sitting with Andrea, always a good time.
Always a good time. Probably one of the most funny people I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yep.
Top level, top shelf.
Top level. Even just kind of chopping it up before we started recording. Like, I wasn't sure that we were going to be able to record, like to get it together to be able to keep a straight face.
Yeah. There was wasn't there an Instagram post of hers that you, I think you loosely referenced in there, but just or I can't remember if we talked about it before or during.
Yeah, I think it was before. It is probably one of my favorite posts I've ever seen on Instagram. Yeah. Ever, all time.
But wait, what is it? What's the description of the post?
So a description of the post is Andrea laying in a hammock and a photo of kind of like her, like looking out over the hammock, but you can see her knee, shins, and feet kind of in the background a little bit. Yeah. And she's wearing a pair of compression socks that look to be somewhere in the color spectrum of blue and maybe neon yellow. Somewhere around there. And the words it says here are just a child-free perimenopausal woman embracing compression socks and spacious rest to have energy for collective care, imagination, and play. That's the homie.
Collective care, imagination, play.
Yeah.
I mean, that description.
It is, honestly, is one of my favorite posts I've ever seen.
Yeah.
It's my favorite.
Nailed it.
Yeah. That is Andrea, man. I wasn't sure that we were going to make it through the interview. Like, there were times where it felt like kind of biting her tongue almost, or like,
oh yeah,
just about to crack in some ways, you know. That was kind of like switch over to trying to have this conversation that's recorded and getting through things in a way that is understandable or maybe coherent or clear. Yeah.
You've referenced wanting to record us doing this, which I've never been like a huge fan of. To be decided, possibly Godzilla 1.
I am really pushing for the title Godzilla Plus One. I love it, man. I absolutely love it. I think a show about self-compassion titled Godzilla Plus One, conducted by or hosted by Andrea Meronuck, like that is just, that's pure gold. Gold.
Yeah, genius. Yeah, she came up with a lot of really good descriptors for what Godzilla represented metaphorically. But prior to that, when we were chopping it up, she basically said that there's a movie titled
Godzilla Minus One.
Godzilla Minus One. Yeah. And so so that was the initial source of inspiration.
Yeah, but it didn't have like meaning necessarily. It was just sort of like the other side of it. Why minus one? We can do plus one.
Just doing some straight up algebra.
Yeah.
It's on the other side of the equation. Yeah. If there's a Godzilla minus one, you need a Godzilla plus one.
Yeah, man. Keep it balanced through mathematics. So Andrew's going to do that with plus one.
Keeping it balanced.
Yes, keeping it balanced.
How much are you looking forward to that?
100.
100%. Yeah. Did you have any takeaways or thoughts?
It was always a good time, right? I really enjoyed listening to Andrea talk about growing up in North Dakota, just south of South Dakota, or skipping over.
Just north of South Dakota.
Just north of South Dakota. Still confused by South Dakota. Still confused by how we describe that.
I actually am not. I wouldn't be the one to ask, but I think North Dakota is north of South Dakota.
See, that makes sense.
And the reason I wouldn't be the one to ask is because I
kind of pooed the Scrooge on that one, huh? Yeah, I got that. Yeah. So that was a good time. But I love listening to her talk about her neighbor in the garden and that sort of thing, and the influence that's had on her adult life.
The inspiration.
Yeah, and she's spending her mornings in the garden, man, in her PJs and just feet in the dirt, you know?
Living her BLE.
And that along with, I feel like we probably could have just talked in this stuff for a really long time, but about like the music scene, art scene, and how that was all kind of connected to activism for her and how that's influenced a lot of her, I don't know, I'd say worldview and the action she takes, maybe values she holds. Yeah, I thought that stuff was really interesting. Fun to get to know about Andrea.
For sure.
Yeah.
100. Yeah. Why don't you take us out by shouting us out?
I guess we're done, huh? No doubt. You can always find us on the interwebs, www.beyondflag.com, flag spelled
FLG.
And we are on the IG, beyond_flag. Feel free to hit us up. If you want to find Andrea, you can see her at Northland Family Help Center online. And then she also has an Instagram, new.moon.somatics.
Yeah, hit her up.
Enjoy.
Take care.
Lovies.
So 3 different questions, I guess, but something that,
You know, we learn in school. You're not supposed to do 3 questions.
Was that the class you two took together?
Yeah. I had this problem with attention in school, so I might have missed that part. Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Did you two did you sit next to each other in class? I'd be so curious how this panned out.
We've just asked you questions about all the multitude and variety of things that you're doing in the world and are astonished by how you do them so well.
Thanks.
And with grace. And class. We'll say class.
And compassion.
Like
a true North Dakotan.
I mean, I did learn all my non-compassionate ways up there. But, that is the legacy probably of like a settler colonial process. So we're healing that. And there's something about, like, for me, the connection to where I'm from, like, connects me here too. Like there's a, I think that, all right, I'm having a little bit of a brain fart, which people have.
Mm-hmm. That happens.
This is a brain fart. May I be kind to myself? It's a part of life.
Yeah. Brain fart is a part of life, for sure.
Costumes will be required.
Yeah. I think we actually have something in that vein, like a Godzilla costume or something like that.
You do?
Yeah. I'll have to look in our costume bin.
Oh my gosh.
We have all kinds of,
I love
might
costuming.
be something like a Godzilla. Yeah.
What if you rock that one and then if I come dressed as like a Mormon missionary?
Yeah. I would like that.
If I skip the Godzilla and also come as a missionary into the world by twos, right?
What if we put a Mormon missionary costume on the Godzilla?
On the Godzilla. We're in.
Yes, indeed.
Yes, indeed. That's going on the outtake for sure.